Hello there. This is David Harvey, perhaps best known to you as an author of a book on the Anti-Capitalist Chronicles, which was a set of essays drawn from a podcast of that title, which was hosted over the past 3 or 4 years by Democracy at Work. What we've now decided, a group of us, is to set up our own platform for the actually development of as it were, a collective of podcasts from different parts of the world that are going to shed light upon the situation, economic and political, as it is unfolding today. Our recognition is that in calling this platform Politics in Motion, that we are clearly understanding that the world is changing and changing very fast, and that concepts drawn from long ago have a limited capacity in themselves to just work out, as it were, without any transformation or any change. So our idea is to recognize the transformations that are occurring with things like artificial intelligence, robotization, many institutional reconfigurations, which are changing the way in which politics is working out, and also changing the way in which mental conceptions of the world are being shaped and formed.
Hello, I am Miguel Robles Duran, and I'm the host of Cities After, which is a podcast series and a YouTube stream that has been on the air for around 2.5 years, originally hosted by Democracy at Work. A couple of friends, including David Harvey, Chris Caruso, Laura Rakovic, Ana Rodriguez in Ecuador, and so on, have decided to put together a different kind of media platform that addresses the consequences of capitalism and the way that capitalism is in motion from different disciplinary perspectives.
I'm Laura Rakovic, and I'm the host of a new podcast called Cultural Counterpower. And on this podcast, we're going to be delving into the ways in which art and politics can work together to imagine new ways of approaching the problems that we've had in our society for eons. To rethinking the most embedded conflicts, from the problematics of late capitalism to the ways in which we go shopping on a daily basis. How do we visualize, imagine, and understand a new way of seeing the world in which we live? Without being able to imagine the different world that we want to live in, there is no way we can possibly embody it or live it. And so this podcast will address art. It will invite artists to talk with us about the ways that they see the world swirling around us, and maybe open up some ways to reimagine the way we think and see and understand the challenges we face every day.
Hola, bienvenidos a Mercado Popular, un podcast de Politics in Motion. Este es un espacio de diálogo para las culturas anticapitalistas en movimiento. Desde Quito, Ecuador, que es una ciudad de un histórico mercado, les invitamos, en español y en América Latina, a conversar con nosotros, artistas, gestores, dirigentes, investigadores, niños, jóvenes, todos aquellos que han entendido que el mercado, más allá de ser un espacio de compra y venta, es también un espacio de palabra, de construcción de cultura, de construcción de común, de conflicto, de divergencia. Aquí caben todos, cabemos todes, cabemos todas y podemos comer todas y podemos dialogar. Así que bienvenidos, cordialmente invitados. Les esperamos en Mercado Popular.
From my perspective, as a person that works in cities on an everyday basis, our intention with Politics in Motion is to emphasize that territories are nothing but the product of capital. And capital seen as a dynamic entity, as a dynamic system that is always in motion and always in contradiction with the territory it produces. Right? On another hand, it's also very important to look at capital not only as a system that is in motion, but as a system that works on a planetary scale, and even today, even beyond our planet. And within this, there's a set of contradictions that appear. Traditionally, cities have always been worked upon the question of its geographical limits, of its localities. Most cities are prescribed within a geographical and political limit. Nevertheless, what produces the thing that is behind me is not something that is politically prescribed with a limitation or a geographical description. What produces what is behind me is actually a series of dynamic systems over a purpose of time, over geographical reach, right? That materializes in something that has a representation. And that representation behind me could be seen as Wall Street, right? Which many of us know that Wall Street is not American anymore. It's not something that is of New York. Actually, the majority of stakeholders of Wall Street are not Americans. There's a lot of German companies that own that, right? That continuously sort of exchange millions and trillions and billions of dollars that decide and that fund policymakers, like that lobby for the production of specific territories. And I think most importantly for us that look into urbanization is how that continues to prescribe the massive inequalities that we all face in our territories, from homelessness, lack of food, from the rise of rents, from the impossibility of actually living, even the lack of public spaces, how that becomes a consequence of the fervent desire of capitalism to continue to extract its surplus and then just giving it to a very few. So that is one of the main aspects that Cities After at Politics in Motion will be working upon.
One of my favorite citations from Marx is this. He said, if everything was as it appeared to be on the surface, there would be no need for science. Now, I ask you, for example, to take a look at what I see behind me in Wall Street. And you see a set of buildings. And you take photos and you see the buildings and you can give me descriptions of the buildings. But then I start to ask, what's going on between the buildings? Do you realize trillions of dollars are moving from one building to another? But you don't see it. You can't see it. Now, what's more important, what you see or what is going on right there in the movement of capital? And you look at this and you say, well, actually also, there are people moving in and out of those structures. There's energy, there's water, there's detritus, everything. And in other words, if we want to really understand what is going on in that space over there, we've got to understand the way in which it is distributing funds to all kinds of people all around the world and taking money and appropriating money and those kinds of things. Those are the kinds of things we need to look at. So remember that. If everything was as it appeared to be on the surface, there will be no need for science. We want to create a new science, a science that is actually about what's going on between the buildings and inside of the buildings, rather than simply what you see on the outside.
The whole point is to think about our current realities in different ways, to be able to use the power of our imaginations, inspired by the art and artists that we talk about, new ways of thinking through old questions that have been plaguing society for a bajillion years. We really need a space to think together, to imagine differently, to take on the power structures that be, and to construct counterpower and counter narratives together.
And the perspective we want to take is one of what we call the totality. That is, we don't want to simply talk about the particular problem in a particular place at a particular time, interesting though such issues are, but to try to situate it in relationship to the totality of what is going on within a capitalist mode of production. So it is therefore inspired by a theoretical framework which is more, dare I say it, dialectical and relational, rather than simply scientific in the rather wooden manner in which contemporary economics approaches things.
Para que confluyamos, para que nos entendamos, para diverger, para estar de acuerdo, para construir lo común. Este es un espacio de la cultura que pasa por la comida, que pasa por el mercado, que pasa por la realidad que vivimos y que intenta, al establecer el diálogo con todos los distintos, con las distintas, proponer un mercado ampliado, un mercado de la palabra.
What to do about climate change, what to do about social inequality, what to do about the increasing mass of the economy and the huge consequences that exist for investment in the future. We wish, as it were, to understand the positionality we are now in against the background of the long history of what capital accumulation has been about and what the long prehistory of capital accumulation is, as we are moving now into a different era with different technologies, different institutions, different cultural configurations, and different cultural activities. This is a very exciting moment for many of us engaged in this, and we hope that you will join us and listen to us and contribute all you can, because right now we desperately need to think clearly about what the alternatives are and what the dangers currently are.
Now, so what we hope is to build an organization, a platform that allows us to discuss the certain particularities of our localities, but always with a question of a planetary scale and of the dynamics and the motion in which capital operates. So I hope that you join us into subscribing, please, into following us in all kinds of social media, even though we don't like social media, but it's something that we need. I hope that you also consider donating through our Patreon account, and soon we'll have more forms of donating. And also soon we're going to open a little shop where we will have specific things that will help us continue expanding and making our streams more available, because I think it is very, very necessary to inform us from a planetary perspective, and this is what we are tending to do. Thank you very much.